In Pennsylvania, there is a nuclear reactor that partially melted down in 1979. Regulators spent decades making sure it would never run again. This year, it is scheduled to switch back on, not to power homes, to power artificial intelligence. The federal investigation into why it failed the first time found something specific, not a broken part, a mindset, a habit of trusting the equipment and ignoring the people in the room. That finding is a real public federal report. And right now, a regulator is deciding whether the exact conditions it warned about have actually been fixed. This is that report held up against the paperwork being filed today, beat by beat. You're watching Black Box Breakdown. The Meltdown Reactor A I just reopened. Chapter 1, the morning nobody was ready for. March 28th, 1979, 4 in the morning, 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania. Control room operator Craig Faust is at the panel of Unit 2 when the first alarm cuts through the dark. A maintenance job on a water filter, 3 floors away, trips the pumps feeding the plant's steam generators. Within seconds, the reactor shuts itself down automatically, exactly as designed. Then a relief valve at the top of the reactor's pressurizer opens to bleed off pressure, exactly as designed. And then it does something it was not designed to do. It sticks open. In the control room, a light on the panel shows the valve is closed. But that light was never wired to the valve itself. It was wired to the signal telling the valve to close. Nobody in that room knew the difference. For 2 hours, coolant drains out of an open valve that every instrument in the room insists is shut. This exact failure had happened before, 18 months earlier, at a nearly identical reactor in Ohio. A relief valve stuck open there too. Federal regulators studied it. Nobody warned the operators at 3 Mile Island. Craig Faust and the other operators on shift that morning did not know any of this. They were reading a control panel that was built to hide the one thing they most needed to see. Chapter 2, the mistake that made it worse. Operators are trained to watch one gauge above all others, the water level in the pressurizer. As coolant drains out through the stuck valve, that gauge reads full, rising, even. So operator Edward Frederick does exactly what his training tells him to do when a reactor looks like it's overfilling. He throttles back the emergency cooling pumps. It is the single decision that turns a manageable equipment failure into a partial meltdown. The core starts to uncover, and no one in the room can see it happening. 8 minutes in, operator Craig Faust finds something else. Emergency feedwater valves left closed after maintenance that were never supposed to be closed at all. He reopens them. It is the first thing anyone gets right that morning. By then, more than 100 alarms are sounding at once. The control panel physically cannot show the operators everything failing in time for them to react to it. A hydrogen bubble forms at the top of the reactor vessel. For days, nobody is certain whether it can explode. Radioactive gas is deliberately vented from the plant to relieve pressure. Pennsylvania's governor advises pregnant women and small children within 5 miles to leave. An estimated 140,000 people evacuate the region on their own. 4 days later, President Carter, a trained nuclear engineer himself, walks into the Unit 2 control room in person to prove to the country it was safe enough to stand in. Chapter 3, the report they didn't want to hear. 7 months later, a federal commission led by mathematician John Kemeny delivers its verdict. And it is not the verdict the industry expected. The commission's central finding was not about the stuck valve or the misleading light or even the training. It was about a mindset, an industry so focused on the safety of its equipment that it downplayed the one thing actually running the plant, the people in the room. The report singled out the regulator itself. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, it found, was so narrowly focused on whether individual parts met code that it never stepped back to ask whether the plant as a whole was actually being run safely. It recommended sweeping changes, better operator training, redesigned control rooms, and a federal inspector living on site at every reactor in the country permanently. The health toll is still disputed. One 1997 university study found higher cancer rates downwind of the plant. Federal regulators and other researchers disagree, pointing to smoking rates and study design. Nearly 50 years later, there is still no settled answer. What is not disputed is what happened to the reactor itself. Unit 2 never ran again. Its cleanup took 14 years and cost roughly $1 billion. It was, everyone agreed, finished. Chapter 4. The switch nobody expected. Not Unit 2. Its neighbour, Unit 1, kept running for decades after, until it was shut down for purely economic reasons in 2019. It sat idle for 5 years. Then, in September 2024, Constellation Energy announced it would spend $1.6 billion to bring that idle reactor back online. Not for the power grid, for one customer, Microsoft. The deal is a 20-year contract to sell the plant's entire output, 835 megawatts, to power the data centers running artificial intelligence. The plant even has a new name now, Crane Clean Energy Center. The original target for switching back on was 2028. It has since been moved a year earlier. 3 Mile Island Alert, the same watchdog group that has monitored this site since before the meltdown, calls the process rushed. Its director says the fuel is already being delivered before regulators have even finished reviewing it, calling it, in his words, quote, a farce. Chapter 5. The paperwork. In June 2026, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission released its draft assessment for reauthorizing the plant. Its preliminary finding, no significant environmental impact. The public comment period closed in July. Fresh nuclear fuel is scheduled to arrive on site by the end of this year, sitting in storage, waiting on a final license decision expected as early as next spring. Separately, the region's power grid operator has had to intervene, granting a special waiver just to make room on the grid for this one reactor's return. As of now, the final environmental review has not been published. It is expected within weeks. The restart of a reactor that partially melted down is, right now, an open file. Chapter 6. Putting the old report on trial. So here is the question nobody at a press conference is being asked directly. Not, is nuclear power safe? This one. Has the specific mindset the Kemeny Commission blamed in 1979 actually been fixed on this reactor before it runs again? The Commission's first finding was a control room built to hide critical information from operators. Modern reactor control rooms, including this one's, have been redesigned since with clearer instrumentation. On paper, that finding has been addressed. The Commission's second finding was a regulator too narrowly focused on individual parts to see the bigger picture. That is precisely the criticism 3 Mile Island Alert is making again today about the same regulator on the same site. The Commission's third finding was an industry moving faster than its own oversight could keep up with. A reactor idle for 5 years, restarting on a contract signed for a technology, artificial intelligence, that barely existed the last time this plant ran. Nobody involved is claiming this reactor is the same one that failed in 1979. It has new fuel, new inspections, decades of accumulated regulation behind it. But the Commission's real warning was never about one broken valve. It was about how easy it is to trust a system right up until the moment the system is wrong. That is the exact test this restart is running again, live this year. What stays with me here isn't the meltdown. Nobody died from it directly, and the plant survived to be studied in exhaustive detail. What stays with me is that the fix it produced, a federal report about paying attention to people instead of just parts, is being tested again on the exact same site, decades later, for a technology nobody in that control room could have imagined. The paperwork on this restart is still open. By the time you're watching this, some of it may already be decided. If a warning that got ignored for 18 months unsettled you, wait until you see the repair shortcut Boeing made 7 years before it killed 520 people on Japan Airlines Flight 123. Subscribe to Black Box Breakdown.
If this one got under your skin a little, good. That's the point. And it only keeps happening because people like you keep showing up.
So do one thing for me. Hit subscribe. It is free, and it is the whole reason Black Box can keep taking these disasters apart.